these generals constitute a threat to national and state security in the country. For me, that's the crisis. That's what is coming out in Parliament and in the Commission. The top brass
Indeed.
of the South African Police Service has become a threat to national and state security. In fact, I was thinking this morning that a stockfile of grandmothers can infiltrate the police. So I have a problem with the fact that Ramaphosa took intelligence and he put it in his office. I also have a problem that the National Security Council is within the office of the president. That is a problem. What if the president is the primary threat to national and state security?
Oh, wow.
Is it not possible that the criminal enterprise in South Africa has become a political enterprise? We're talking about drug cartels. It must be able to buy influence. It must be able to buy political cover. Now, the allegation is that there are members of the political class who are working with criminal syndicates and drug cartels. That would mean that drug cartels and criminal syndicates have succeeded in buying political cover for themselves.
That because of what happened in Phala and the fact that there has not even been any accountability taken or proper investigations, that he does not stand as a person that we can trust to lead a process like uncovering what is happening in South Africa.
So for me, there's just too much that is not kosher around the president to raise the question.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the EFF podcast. I'm your host, Lebohang Mujapilu, and we have an exciting episode for you today. We have independent political analyst and healer, Aubrey Mashikri. Thank you for joining us, Gogo. You're welcome here to the EFF studios. We're happy to have you again. We'll just go straight into it. The current state of things that have been happening since July, when Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi made some big and deep revelations. I'm reminded of William Butler Yeats, as quoted by Chinua Achebe. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold.
Yes.
Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Is South Africa in a state of crisis?
I would say so. But what people tend to do is to confuse the crisis in the ANC with the crisis in the country.
Okay, are they not the same, connected?
Well, there's a crisis in the ANC.
Yes.
And the ANC has become a crisis for the country.
Okay, all right.
But the country has a deeper political crisis across the board.
Okay.
The political class in this country has become a crisis for the country. In fact, what I would say is that if you look at the continent as a whole, including South Africa, the political class on the continent is a curse to the people of the continent. In other words, the leaders of this continent, from Cape to Cairo, have become a curse to the people of the continent. And South Africa is not an exception in this regard. So we have a generalized political crisis across the board. The ANC is but a manifestation of that generalized crisis, or the crisis that the ANC has become is but a generalized crisis. It's but a manifestation of that generalized crisis. But when I look at what Mkhwanazi said from the 6th at the commission in Parliament, and I look at what General Masemula has said, what General Sibiya has said, I come to the conclusion that yes, Mkhwanazi, I think we can safely assume, like any human being, has his weaknesses, has his strengths. Masemola has his weaknesses, has his strengths. Sibiya has his weaknesses and his strengths. In other words, these generals have their weaknesses and strengths as individuals, but that's not the problem. The problem is this. As a collective, it's clear to me that these generals constitute a threat to national and state security in the country. For me, that's the crisis. That's what is coming out in Parliament and in the Commission. The top brass
Indeed.
of the South African Police Service has become a threat to national and state security.
That is interesting. So if we're going to what I think it was Sibiya who stated that there is no crime intelligence in South Africa.
Well, I might have misheard. You can check. I thought he said there is no intelligence.
Okay.
I may be wrong. Maybe I misheard him. But I heard that all the MPs who spoke seem to have heard him saying there is no crime intelligence in the country. Whether he said there is no intelligence in the country or there is no crime intelligence in the country, the problem is the same.
The problem remains the same.
You can't have a general in the South African Police Service saying there is no intelligence or there is no crime intelligence in the country. But I'm not surprising that you can say that. When I listen to these generals, another thing that is clear to me is that they are not disciplined. There is a lack of discipline in the top brass of the South African police. In fact, I was thinking this morning that a stockfile of grandmothers can infiltrate the police. For me, what is coming out of Parliament and the Commission tells me that the top brass of the South African police have become such a threat to state and national security that a group of grandmothers
can infiltrate. That's how weak it is. This is interesting. Do you think maybe perhaps it has something to do with the state intelligence actually then being coming under the presidency, under Ramaphosa's presidency?
Well, you might have heard me on other platforms complaining that I have a problem with the fact that the intelligence function resides in the office of the president.
Indeed.
So I have a problem with the fact that Ramaphosa took intelligence and he put it in his office. I also have a problem that the National Security Council is within the office of the president. That is a problem. Because a question I've asked, in fact, I asked this question in an article I wrote for News 24. What if the president is the primary threat to national and state security?
Oh, wow.
So, in other words, one of the possible threats that the intelligence services must be able to counter lies in the possibility that the head of state may be the primary threat to national and state security. So yes, I do have a problem with the fact that the intelligence function sits in the office of the president.
What are the implications of that? what does Ramaphosa having access and control of that organ do to a country like ours?
Well, let me come at it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask two questions, and then I'll come back to Ramaphosa. When I listen to what Mkhwanazi says on the 6th of January, and I listen to what Masemula says, I listen to what General Dumisani Khumalo says, I listen to what General Sibia says, I ask two questions. Is it not possible that the criminal enterprise in South Africa has become a political enterprise?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, is it not possible that criminality in South Africa has become a means by which you prosecute politics?
Indeed.
The second question is this: is it not possible that the political enterprise in South Africa has become a criminal enterprise?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you combine those two questions, one of the places you land at is a place I call the deep state. Now, the deep state comes into existence when you have a confluence of political, intelligence, business, and criminal interests. In other words, the deep state comes into being when politicians, senior government officials, in this case, of course, this would be, among others, the top brass in the police, rogue elements in the intelligence services, whether it's private intelligence or state intelligence, rogue elements in business, and criminal syndicates work together in pursuit of the common goal of making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that is part of the analysis I do. So what I do, I look at what is going on and I ask the question, is it consistent, what we're looking at, or inconsistent with my theory of the deep state? Now, my analysis has been that there is a time when you don't have only one deep state project. You have more than one deep state project. And the different deep state projects come into competition and conflict with one another.
Okay.
And there's a time when conflict at the level of the deep state, when different deep state projects come into conflict with one another, manifests as conflict in the dominant party. Of course, at that time, the dominant party is the ANC. But there is a time when conflict, factional or otherwise, in the dominant party becomes conflict in the deep state. Manifesting, for instance, as we see now, as conflict in the security establishment, conflict in the police service, conflict in the intelligence environment, and so on. Now, of course, because as I said, the deep state is constituted by criminal syndicates, politicians, senior government officials, and so on. What that means is that you must look at a criminal syndicate or a cartel and ask the question, what does a cartel need? What does a criminal syndicate need? Firstly, it needs information. In other words, it needs access to intelligence. So you need to capture people in the intelligence environment. Of course, the primary thing it wants is money. Lots of money. What can it buy with that money?
Exactly.
First of all, if it's a drug cartel, because in what Mkhwanazi is saying, we're talking about drug cartels. it must be able to buy influence. It must be able to buy political cover. Now, the allegation is that there are members of the political class who are working with criminal syndicates and drug cartels. That would mean that drug cartels and criminal syndicates have succeeded in buying political cover for themselves. But it also means they do not only buy political cover, they buy political influence.
Mm-hmm.
And the danger with that is that the day will come, if we're not there anymore, that they are able to buy policy content.
Exactly, yes.
By that I mean, you will look at some decisions and wonder whether these decisions have been taken independently by the decision maker in the state or were influenced by external forces like criminal syndicates.
Yes.
For instance, night before last, the Inspector General of Intelligence is suspended with immediate effect by the president. Now, first of all, this happens in the middle of the night while you're sleeping. What was the Inspector General of Intelligence doing prior to this moment? He did an investigation on the basis of which he recommended that action must be taken against General Masemula and the head of crime intelligence. Now, when he is suspended by the president, after that, you can come to the conclusion that it's a mere coincidence. Or you can come to the conclusion that something is not kosher about this decision. Now, in a climate where allegations are being made that politicians, people in intelligence, the top brass of the police have been captured by drug cartels, in that climate, it's not unreasonable to ask whether the president makes this decision in a manner independent from the allegations that are being made, or whether we are seeing evidence that these cartels are able to buy the content of police. So that's the problem. And then you have Phala Phala. Now, the Phala Phala story is unraveling.
It is.
And that raises the question, is this president, Cyril Ramaphosa, should preside over all of this? In other words, does he have the moral authority to preside over this problem we have at the moment, which is a form of state capture? Because to capture the top brass of the police and to capture members of the political class, members of the intelligence community, is a form of state capture. Is this president the president who has the moral authority to preside over this problem?
So you are saying that because of what happened in Phala Phala, of course, I mean, it's still quite an unresolved topic for a lot of people, because it's like, where did that money come from, and the way that it was handled behind the scenes, and the use of state institutions to cover up certain things. That because of what happened in Phala Phala, and the fact that there has not even been any accountability taken or proper investigations, that he does not stand as a person that we can trust to lead a process like uncovering what is happening in South Africa.
I don't think he has the moral authority for that. But not only Phala Phala. You have a judge who decides that the CR17 bank statements must be sealed.
Thank you, yes.
So for me, there's just too much that is kosher or that is not kosher around the president. I don't know whether you watch rugby. whether you're familiar with rugby.
I am, yes.
Okay. Look at what happens. The Reserve Bank does an investigation. The Public Protector does an investigation. Parliament
Yes.
asks Judge Ngobo.
Yes, the Section 89 report.
Yes.
Yes.
To do an investigation. SARS does an investigation. And for me, the picture that emerges is that our democratic institutions form a scrum around the president to protect the president. So for me, there's just too much that is not kosher around the president to raise the question whether he has the moral authority to be the one who presides over all this. But when you look at this, at what is being said by all these generals, and you look at it in terms of national security and state security. Now, of course, some people don't distinguish between national security and state security. For me, a national security strategy puts the citizen at the center. So the primary function of any national security strategy
Is the citizens.
Is the security of the citizen. Yeah. Whether you're talking about food security, whether you're talking about public safety, whether you're talking about energy security, whether you're talking about the health of the body of the citizen, different kinds of security the individual citizen must enjoy, and us as a collective of citizens must enjoy. For me, that is central when it comes to designing a national security strategy. State security is but a component of national security if we look at national security in this way. Now, if you compromise national security in any way, the possibility that you are going to compromise
state security.
If you compromise state security in any way, the possibility that you may compromise national security, because there's a symbiotic relationship between the two. And then there's the issue of statecraft. When I listen to what is coming out of Parliament and the Commission, again, I come to the conclusion, not for the first time, that we are not serious about statecraft. That those who occupy leadership positions in the state are not serious about statecraft or don't have the competence to deal and manage statecraft.
I want to then ask, I think we want to, one of the benefits of having elders in our space is that we have a historical bank. I want to go back. When did the state begin to fall apart? Where can we say that, and the ANC, because it's like, they're connected. When do we say that this is when we began to see the seeds of what is happening now to our state intelligence, to our national security, to this point of deep state? When did we begin to see and say, okay, something is not right? Like from your own view.
Well, thank you for the promotion. I will insist now that people call me an elder. Actually, if you want to trace the roots of the threat to national security and state security facing us today, the roots take you to the liberation struggle.
Okay.
In this way, there are networks and relationships that developed between those who were in the liberation movement and those who were in criminal syndicates during the struggle. And this is why you end up with a commissioner of the police who has a relationship with a capo di tutti capo of the mafia in South Africa, Glenn Aliotti.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that example actually is critical.
This is Jackie Selebi.
Yes. So our commissioner of police at some point becomes the president of Interpol, which means through him, because this capo di tutti capo has infiltrated the top brass of our police force, through him, the capo di tutti capo, and maybe others too in the criminal underworld, infiltrate Interpol. Because one of the things we must be alive to is that what I describe as the deep state, or what I describe as networks that are constituted by relationships between members of the political class, rogue elements in intelligence, and criminal syndicates. These relationships are not confined to the borders of South Africa. The criminal enterprise, particularly when it comes to drug cartels, is a global enterprise. Now, when you look at South Africa, I have said, bear in mind that criminal syndicates and cartels from Eastern Europe are here. Cartels from Asia, such as, let's say, the Shanghai Mafia, they are here. The Nigerian Mafia is here. Cartels from places like Mexico and other parts of South America are here. Because the criminal enterprise has become a global enterprise. But remember, for a cartel, whether it's a drug cartel or another kind of cartel, to succeed, there must come a point where it diversifies its criminal portfolio. I'll give you an example. So you have a drug cartel in South Africa. The same drug cartel is involved in human trafficking. The same drug cartel is involved in gun running. The same drug cartel may be involved in what is happening in so-called illegal mining. The same drug cartel, by the way, may be involved in the music industry. For instance, we know that some of the criminal elements that are linked to countries such as Lesotho have infiltrated the music industry. And some artists have become part, or some elements in the music industry have become part of the criminal enterprise. But the same cartel may be involved in a different kind of human trafficking. Many people who are middle class in this country are black, have helpers from Lesotho.
Indeed, yes.
And sometimes the labor agent is a criminal syndicate, that they are trafficked from Lesotho to South Africa to come and work under slave conditions. So your helper basically has a drug cartel or different kind of syndicate as an agent, as a labor agent. So the diversification of the criminal enterprise is one of the challenges facing us. And this diversification is happening at a global level. Now, one of the things that a cartel must be able to do is to buy technology. so that they are always a step ahead of what the state is doing when it comes to detection using technology or the intelligence service. The next frontier is AI. That is the next thing cartels are going to buy, AI, as part of the capacity they need to gather intelligence, to monitor the state. Remember, one of the things a successful cartel must do is to mirror the capacity of the state in
Indeed,
different ways.
yes.
So it must be a mirror of the state. Now, the problem, though, is that when you talk about cartel, we become reductionist, sometimes in a racial way. I can tell you now that in the minds of many who are watching, when they think of a member of a drug cartel, that member is not white. That member is not black.
Mm-hmm.
But even some of us who should know better, when we use language, a story emerges that there was collusion between different construction companies in the bidding for contracts of the 2010 World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
What do we call it? We don't call it corruption. When the cartels are white,
Yes.
we call it collusion. When the cartels are black, we call it corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So even those of us who should know better, we fall into that trap of being reductionist in our understanding of what a drug cartel is. But it gets worse. Some of the cartels we should be investigating, their membership consists of people who wear ties and beautiful suits. We don't look at those cartels. Why? Because of the relationship between capital and politics.
Indeed.
Now, if you look at what I call banksterism, the gangsterism of banks, the gangsterism of people who run banks globally, there's cartel activity going on there. When you look at banksterism, the gangsterism of bankers and banks. But capital itself, like the drug cartel, buys political cover and influence. And in fact, the interests of capital globally are usually represented in legislatures.
Yes.
That is why almost always I argue that the salaries of politicians, the salaries of public representatives everywhere in the world must be paid not from the fiscus. They must be paid by banks. Because public representatives, politicians, do more for banks than they do for the citizens.
For the citizens.
Now, there is a recent report. So there are certain reports that our media becomes allergic to. For instance, there is a report that comes out every 2 years. It is a report it's a study that is done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. Now, when it comes to maths, science, and so on, we rank very low as South Africa.
Yes, we do.
But when it comes to that study by PwC, it is a study into fraud and corruption in the private sector. We have never fallen below number 5 as South Africa. But because our media is allergic to any negative story about the private sector, about capital, particularly white capital, you won't find a lot of reporting on the PwC report on fraud and corruption globally in the private sector. Recently, Open Secrets came out with a report about who owns the South African economy and therefore owns South Africa. which is essentially a report about the influence, politically and in other ways, of capital in South Africa. How much of that have you seen in the media?
Not a lot. And it's interesting to me because what we're basically then saying is that the state in its nature and in its existence is created and managed by private interests.
Well,
and capital. Like there's always been that connection.
There is a link between capital and the content of public policy.
Yes.
Capital distorts the content of public policy in its interest.
Yes, definitely.
Take what Open Secrets are saying in their study. They're saying there's a revolving door. People sit in the Reserve Bank, they sit in National Treasury as senior managers. They leave the Reserve Bank, they leave National Treasury to become executives where? In the financial sector, in banks. And senior executives or executives and managers in the financial sector in banks, when they leave, where do they go to? The Reserve Bank and National Treasury. Yes. Why? Because they are engaging in a form of state capture we call regulatory capture.
Yes.
But we're not interested in that. We're interested in the drug cartel. When in fact, as I said, the drug cartel, in terms of its capacity, must mirror the capacity of the state on top of capturing the state or parts of the state. The same applies to capital. There is an extent to which capital must mirror the capacity of the state and capture portions of the state. Now, it's going to get worse over time. And in some countries on the continent and other parts of the world, we're seeing this. Some services that are today provided by the state will be provided by capital.
Indeed. That is the ultimate goal in the end. That is the ultimate goal, that every single service that the state provides must now be privately provided, and obviously extends capital's reach because they're making more money, but also then they get to control all the decisions that are made on a state level, and that us as citizens are now also beholden to capital, and that we are also kind of, what do you call that? Disabled in our ability to act, in our ability to fight, in our ability to resist, because we are going to simply be disabled by the need to make money, the need to be able to fight, to gain access to services that we are too tired to fight. We're too tired to, and also who are we resisting against? If we can't march on a private company to give us water. We can't march on a private company to give us electricity, because right now we can march on the state. We can hold our parliament accountable. We can hold our political leaders accountable. But when they are no longer serving us, we're going to be in a much deeper problem of gaining any sort of freedom and equality if the private is who is now in charge totally.
Well, what we call state capture is going to be like a pillow fight between nuns when we reach the stage I'm talking about.
Yes.
When capital has not only captured the state, you saw how Elon Musk captured the state.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. That man was in the Oval Office making decisions, a private citizen.
Yeah. Goes into the creation of Doge.
Yes.
One of the things
government
that happens is that a private actor has access to public information about citizens and other things. So the next level of state capture is the level where capital provides services that were provided by the state. And that will complete the project of capturing the state. And this will not only be in South Africa, but global. If you remember, there's a time in Ghana when the IMF and the World Bank impose structural adjustment programs.
Yes.
But what do they do? To make sure that Ghana implements the structural adjustment program, they sit in parliament. And Ghana is not the only country where they did this.
It's Zimbabwe had ESAP in the 90s.
Yes.
Kenya had a similar program.
Yes.
And yeah, in Zambia, I think many countries where the World Bank, and in those days, the World Bank and the IMF were still considered to be progressive institutions. But what they did was really completely mess up economies, because some of the things they do is take control of civil service. And the first thing they say is, you have a bloated civil service.
Yes.
And yet, government is the main employer. So they cut that out. They cut spending towards important institutions to focus on settling debt and also influence policy making on every single level. So they come in and say, oh, we'll give you some money and we'll help you readjust what you need to do, but leave these economies in worse situations. And also make the government unable to actually provide the essential services and employment.
There is another way in which the state will be captured and has been captured in countries like Malawi.
Yes.
So capital will capture the state through NGOs.
Ooh.
In Malawi, you reach a stage where state capacity is so poor that critical parts of the state are run by NGOs. So we always make the mistake of thinking that NGOs, or what we call civil society, are not linked to these interests. In some cases, they are. And through them, the state will be captured. So when you come back here, I think because of where we are now in our discussion, it is very clear what kind of threat these generals have become to state and national security. So we're not just talking about some generals stealing money from crime intelligence or a fight between generals.
No.
In essence, we are talking about a higher level of state capture than the kind of state capture we're talking about, which led to the Zondo Commission. We're talking about a higher level of threats to national and state security, which will lead to a much more pernicious form of state capture, which of course will happen in the interest of the citizen. Now, the Freedom Charter says the people shall govern, which means central to the task of providing state and national security must be the idea and reality of providing security to the citizen, to the people. There's an American judge who said the highest office in a democracy is the office of the citizen. So that should be our orientation when we look at what Mkhwanazi is saying, what CBI is saying, what Masemula is saying, and what is being said about the Minister of Police. That if indeed drug cartels have managed to capture members of the political class, members of our intelligence services, the top brass of the police, and so on, if that indeed is what has happened, we are looking at the potential of a much bigger form of threat of state capture.
I'm wondering though, when we're looking at what is coming out, and obviously reminds me of what has occurred in other African countries, but also what Fanon speaks to a lot about the African ruling elite and political elite of an insensate greed. There is a conspicuous consumption, a level of greed, a level of wanting to acquire and amass and eat, and in Kenya they used to say it's our time to eat.
Yeah.
Like this. And although we can say, okay, as citizens, the citizens should be responsible and say, we need to change that. But we are also have been entered into this thing that what success is, what it looks like, what it feels like, that what we're all waiting for our turn, we're all waiting for our moment. And the ways in which we know success, the ways in which we know what comfort is, what a good life is, has been really kind of shifted in our heads into just requiring and desiring the same greed and consumption and lifestyle, the idea of lifestyle. That do we still have an idea of what is normal and what is good for us to, when we're talking about leadership and when we're talking about just normalcy?
Well, when we develop a national security strategy and we assess internal and external threats, for me, one of the biggest threats to national security is the cult of lifestyle. So people will steal from Tembisa Hospital because they want to buy 5 Lamborghinis and live in a house that we saw in that program, Over the Top Billing.
Top billing. Over the top billing. I like the new name.
So the cult of lifestyle is the problem. Of course, the cult of lifestyle has a cousin or a twin, greed. So the underlying cause when it comes to threats to national and state security is greed.
Yes.
And the cult of lifestyle. Now, what has happened, you talk about success. I can add to that the fact that how do we attach value to a human being? You are more valuable, worthy, depending on what you have. So there is an obsession with having. We focus more on having instead of focusing on being. Because if we're focusing on being, one of the things that those in leadership, in politics, in political parties, in the state, in the police, in intelligence, and so on, would focus on is the well-being of the citizen. But value is attached to individuals on the basis of what they own. What car do you drive? Where do you live? What clothes do you wear? And what label are they? So the greed and the cult of lifestyle and distortions to our value system, for me, are the underlying malaise that has brought us to the point where we are, where drug cartels are able to capture politicians, members of the intelligence service, the top brass of the police. You know why? Because the members of the drug cartel, the politicians, the rogue elements in intelligence, the rogue elements in the top brass of the police want the same thing. They want to be part of the cult of lifestyle.
Yes.
That's why we are where we are today.
How do we, okay. I'm thinking about, that there are progressive Black organizations such as the EFF, and just also young people who are very well versed in very radical and ideological thinking around what we need as a nation, and also going back to believing in the Freedom Charter, believing in socialist principles and communist principles, in Pan-Africanist thought and all of that. How do we organize? What should we be focusing on? How should we be organizing towards fighting what is currently happening on a level of state capture? Are we going at it politically, ideologically, occupying space? How do you advise that we move forward in order to bring South Africa back to a path that will serve us and the majority of its people?
Well, I talk about the political class instead of politicians. Because when we started, I talk about the fact that we have a generalized political crisis across the board. So the reason I talk about members of the political class, I don't want us to be reductionist. I want us to be alive to the fact that to the extent that politicians are a threat to national and state security, that problem is not limited to a single party, to any single party. It's across the board. In my view, I think it's highly unlikely that there is a political party. Maybe Dukwangwetla is an exception. It's highly unlikely that there is a political party, if we were to talk about the bigger political parties, that is not part of the problem in terms of some members of those parties being part of this problem we're describing today. That's one. Two, the problem with our politics and our politicians. Our politicians have no ideology. They are ideologically barren. There is a level of ideological poverty when you look at our political class that is quite worrying, which means our assessments of threats to national security are non-ideological. For me, that is dangerous because remember, some of the threats are external. They come from the global environment. They come from the continental environment. They come from the regional environment. And to analyze those threats, you need some ideological tools. One of the ideological tools I use is that of the colonial matrix of power and coloniality. Now, if we're to talk about coloniality, the logic that drove the reality of colonialism. If we look at coloniality is no longer confined to a particular geographical terrain. Today, we should be talking not about coloniality, but global colonialities, which means when we look at the colonial matrix of power, the colonial matrix of power is not something from the past. It is here right now.
It is.
Now, if you look at the dimensions of the colonial matrix of power, for instance, knowledge and subjectivity, sexuality, authority, economic power, and so on. Look at AI. All we worry about when it comes to AI is that one day I will have the pleasure of being in a flying taxi. We look at the good things, AI. I'm not anti-AI. I'm not a Luddite.
Mhm.
But I think we're uncritical about technology. And I think sometimes we fall into the trap of techno-rationality. When actually, if you use the analytical framework of the colonial matrix of power, the path of colonialism that we saw in the past is the same path we're seeing in the development of AI.
Yes, indeed.
There's an extractive logic, for instance, the extraction of resources, water, energy,
Even
and
in
human
knowledge,
resources.
human resources, indeed.
Now, where does this take place? It is still taking place in those parts of the world that were victims
Indeed.
of colonialism. So the same colonial logic is driving the development of AI.
Yes,
other technologies.
They want to take resources from the Amazon. They are using human resources for ChatGPT and language models from Kenya.
Yes.
And recently, Zex Mda also spoke about how they stole his books to use them in that modeling of language. They are testing weapons on Palestinians and in Sudan and in the Congo for the development of these AI ones where you remotely shoot these things down. Like, it is still just the same ways, like you said, the same people who have been oppressed in those colonial forms is continuing. And I don't think, and you're right, that I don't think we've been critical about it. I don't think even on the African continent that there has been or is any responsive policies around AI.
And more importantly, and disturbingly, what is the global south? The global south, we are the data. The north is the technology. That is critical when we do analysis of national security. Our analyses of national security are devoid of ideological content because our political class is a piece of barren land when it comes to ideology. Ideological poverty is one of the defining features of our political class. And that is a threat to national and state security.
We are directionless. We are leaderless.
Yes.
We are currently leaderless.
My hope is that you young people, because I've given up on our generation and the older generation.
Yes.
Now, in isiZulu and isiXhosa, let me say the Nguni language, we say indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili. To know the way, you must ask those who have traveled.
Yes.
Which means the younger generation must ask us. But the problem we have in the world today is that we have a lot of old people, but a shortage of elders. So elderhood is something that is sorely lacking globally, which means we must then rely on another Nguni saying, ubudoda abukhulela. For me, that means two things. To the extent that my generation and the older generations are failing to perform the tasks of elderhood, then those tasks of elderhood must be performed by the younger generation.
The younger generation.
But ubudoda abukhulela means something else. Firstly, it means wisdom does not reside only in those who are part of the older generation. More importantly, going back to the colonial matrix of power, remember one of the things, there are two things the colonial matrix of power imposes. Firstly, racism, white supremacy. Secondly, gender supremacy. So if we say ubudoda abukhulela, we mean wisdom does not or no longer resides only in those who are part of the older generation. That's one. Two, wisdom does not reside only in those who are men, which means it is time for the younger generation to step up to the task of elderhood and leadership. But also, I'm not going to say we must give opportunities, we must allow women, we must give women a chance. No. Women must seize.
Indeed.
They must seize. They must take what is theirs.
Yes.
And what is theirs must be based on the truth that wisdom does not reside only in those who are men.
Yes.
It is time for women to step up to their rightful role, the rightful role of providing leadership and wisdom to the world. Because who has messed up the world? Men.
Men.
It is time for women to take up the task of leadership.
Indeed. And it has been proven that women leaders leads to more peace, less conflict, and more care for citizenry. So I concur. Women should take it up. I want to ask you, I think, as we go to round up, to bring it home.
Yes.
I think I remember listening to you saying that Julius Malema is the biggest asset of the EFF and also the biggest threat to the EFF. Can you just expand on that a little bit for us?
Well, you're asking me to be rude.
Yes, it's okay. We're home here.
Instead of being gracious. No, I feel home here now. So, of course, members of a certain political party will say, you launch attacks on us on an EFF platform.
No.
And
we want to take it as advice and understanding. Yes.
You know, if today I get a call from the Ku Klux Klan to come and address them, I will go. You know why? Because my content is not going to change. So me being invited by the Ku Klux Klan to address them is a crisis for them, not for me. So in the same way, there is no platform in whose interests I'm going to censor myself.
Definitely. And that is what is appreciated. We appreciate about you.
So I say, if you have a leadership collective, whether they're talking about the leadership collective of the ANC or the EFF or any party, one of the functions of a leadership collective is to manage both the strengths and the weaknesses of the leader. Which means one of the functions of the EFF leadership collective is to manage the strengths and weaknesses of Julius Malema. Unfortunately, there are times when I've been worried about the leadership collective, because there are times when I look at the leader, Julius Malema, what he says, how he says it, what he does, and how he does it. And I think what I'm looking at here is a leadership failure, not of Julius Malema, but a leadership failure of the collective he is part of. The collective is failing to manage his weaknesses. So yes, the EFF will benefit from the strengths of Julius Malema. Julius Malema is a gifted politician, and I'm not saying it because I'm here. He's a gifted politician, and the EFF has benefited from that. But what the EFF leadership collective has not done sufficient, in my view, is to manage his weaknesses. And some of his weaknesses have not benefited the EFF. That is what I mean.
That there is a communal nature to leadership that does not only stand and rest on one person, and that there is a way in which collectively we can assist the person leading, so that it is not just their strengths we're relying on, but also they have something to lean on when they're not at their best.
So during the battle for Polokwane, I think it was around September 2006, the ANC has an NEC meeting. I was so excited when I saw one of the resolutions. The resolution said, effectively, you, number one, Thabo Mbeki. You, number two, Thabo Mbeki. I mean, Jacob Zuma. Go and sit down and craft jointly a solution to this problem. The battle between those who support you has become for the ANC. They failed. The tension between them as individual leaders was so deep
that they could not come together.
They could not sit and jointly craft such a solution. They failed. But the resolution excited me because I thought the NEC, for the first time in a long time, is providing leadership to the leadership.
Yes, indeed. Oh, wow. Yes.
So there is a symbiotic relationship between the leadership of the individual and the leadership of the collective.
Yes.
So what I'm saying, yes, I agree with you. Leadership should be communal. I'm saying there are moments when it is not.
Okay.
Because of the failures of the individual leader and the failures of the collective leadership.
Okay.
That's what
indeed,
I mean.
Indeed. Oh wow! Thank you for that. Now I'm going to enter into Gogo and ask perhaps if you can give us what you see for the future of South Africa. What are you seeing right now about where we're headed? Especially speaking about leadership.
Let me start with the most immediate. What brought us here? The Mkhwanazi revelations of the 6th of July. I am having sleepless nights at the moment because I think the tensions between the generals are being replicated throughout the force. That is not only the top brass that is divided. The divisions are beginning to flow down to the rank and file of the police. Now, Mkhwanazi says, if the commission had not been set up and if the ad hoc committee had not been set up to look at this. Now, I'm not saying Mkhwanazi is an angel. I always say battles of this nature are battles between angels with horns and devils with halos. So I'm not saying Mkhwanazi is an angel. Maybe he's an angel with it. Maybe he's an angel with horns. And if he's a devil, he's a devil with a halo. You know. So here's my fear. Mkhwanazi says, if the commission had not been set up and the other committee had not decided to do its own investigation, he says SAPS was at a point where we're going to see blue on blue violence. I don't think that is far-fetched. At the point when he says it, I may have thought so. But after listening to him, Sibia, Masemula, Khumalo, I don't think that is far-fetched. What is giving me sleepless nights is the possibility that one day we are going to wake up to gunfire, gunfire exchanges between different groups
within the police.
even before we get there, there's something that is already happening. In isiXhosa, we have a saying, we say, siza kutya efileyo, we'll eat the dead one.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from? When men went hunting, and in the forest they see two animals fighting, they let them fight.
Because it's the one that dies.
That's the one they're going to eat. This is what the drug cartels and the criminal syndicates are saying, siza kutya efileyo. So they are watching the top brass of the police fighting amongst themselves. And they say, siza kutya efileyo. That is where we are. Now, the country is heading to what I call a perfect storm of discontent. The discontent of the poor, the discontent of the working poor, the discontent of the working class, the discontent of the middle class.
Indeed, yes.
So the country, in my view, is inexorably, and I say inexorably, sliding towards this perfect storm of discontent. Because when you look at levels of poverty, inequality, people not having water, electricity is becoming unaffordable, there's no work, we're not safe. When I look at that, there is no evidence that South Africa has a government. And there is no evidence that South Africa has a president. In other words, our government and the president are what I call isipogi sempugan, the ghost of a fly. Why do I say so? Watch a fly flying into a spider's web. It gets caught. The spider comes to eat. After it has eaten, what do you see? The fly is still intact. It looks intact, but it is not. What you don't realize, that the spider has eaten everything inside.
Yes.
So it's not intact. Our government and our president, yizipogi zempugan. They are ghosts of the fly. And this condition is leading us to a perfect storm of discontent or an uprising. And when you look at the state of the state, particularly its capacity to manage national security, it is for this reason that I say we are inexorably sliding towards a perfect storm of discontent. Which takes us back to where we started with the drug and other cartels. Remember, they are developing political capacity. In the immediate sense, they will mobilize themselves using popular discontent to advance their own interests.
Indeed, yes.
But beyond that, they will want to achieve something greater. Representation in our parliament, in cabinet, in our legislatures, and municipal councils.
That this is actually a perfect opportunity for them to continue to take over.
Exactly.
That is very scary right now.
And we should be scared.
We should be very scared.
And we should try to scare the politicians.
Yes, we should scare them back.
We should scare the generals.
Yes.
And show them what may happen if they stay on this path. But South Africa does not have a government.
No.
South Africa does not have a president. That's one of the chief challenges we face.
Things have fallen apart. Thank you very much.
Thomas.
Thank you very much, Gogo, for coming through. It was a very fruitful discussion.
Thomas.
It was very fruitful. Thank you for joining us.
You're most welcome.